This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Welcome to the Easthampton City Council meeting for Wednesday, January 22nd. The meeting tonight is being recorded and broadcast by eMedia on Charter Channel 193 and live streaming on their webpage, easthamptonmedia.org. Councilors and participants in this meeting are gathering hybrid on the order extended until March 2025, allowing us to do so. I remind both the members of the City Council and the public participating remotely to remain muted until recognized by the City Council President. Also, for the members of the public, please remove your camera for the duration of the meeting unless you are participating in public speak time or public hearing. Thank you. This meeting is now called to order. Barbara.
Connie Denham. Here. Salem Durg.
Present.
Felicia Jadzik.
Here.
JP Kaczynski.
Here.
Tom Peak.
Here.
Brad Riley.
Here.
Tamara Smith.
Here.
JT Terrell.
Here.
Owen Zarek.
Present.
Okay, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And a moment of silence. Okay, we do have minutes that we need to approve from January 8th, 2025 meeting.
So moved.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the minutes from January 8th? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any against or abstaining?
Abstain.
Okay, one abstention. Motion passes. We do have an opportunity for the public to be able to speak tonight. So we have a timer. We just need that to address the council, to keep your comments to 3 minutes and to give us your name and address for the record. And so feel free to step to the podium. We'll do in-person first and then we'll go online next.
Hi, my name is Eric Poulin, Precinct 2. Hello, Councilors Riley and Smith. It's very nice to meet you. We have never previously met before. This is an important piece of information to share with you all. And this brings me no joy to say this, but I'm here to talk about the process in which certain members of City Council use their position of power to defame, slander, and ruin the professional reputations of people who simply offer to volunteer their time in an unpaid capacity to help the city. At the City Council meeting of December 18th, Councilors Riley and Smith, in their capacity on the Appointments Committee, recommended that I not be reappointed for a third term to the Parks and Recreation Commission, which appeared to be a surprise to half the council, particularly the ones who actually know me and have worked with me on various initiatives. According to various emails acquired through a public records request, it appears that Councilor Riley, as chair of the committee, began asking the city clerk to dig for dirt on me to block my appointment to the commission as far back as November. He asked the clerk if I had violated any laws and was searching for evidence of any misconduct of mine as a commissioner. When literally nothing came back, it appeared that he needed to change course and come up with a different strategy to attempt to block my appointment. He declared at that meeting on December 18th that there were 4 anonymous complaints about me, in spite of the fact that this is a violation of Massachusetts open meeting laws, section 29.05 to be exact. Anonymous complaints cannot be acted upon by a city council. Who's to say that Councilor Riley made up all of these charges? Now, mind you, at no point during the 2 months when he conducted his investigation, which is his word, did he reach out to me to discuss, nor did he contact anyone of the Park Department, including Director John Mason, who wrote a letter in support of my reappointment to the mayor. He regularly has asked potential appointees to meet with the committee, but that invitation was never sent my way, a break of protocol. Councilor Riley also mentioned in an email to the mayor that, quote, I feel an obligation to withhold his reappointment pending review by the city council to ascertain whether should be vote for his reappointment. Well, clearly, based on the surprise reaction of many of you that evening, that review never actually happened. Rather, it appears he decided he had the power to potentially destroy someone's professional reputation and career with the same amount of thoughtful engagement that normally goes in deciding if you want a cup of coffee or tea in the morning. People's lives are not chess pieces to move around on the board, or maybe checkers pieces in your case, Councilor Riley. When questioned by Councilor Kwasinski as to why the Appointments Committee was voting to not recommend me, Councilor Riley passed the baton to Councilor Smith, who stated that the, quote, evidence, in spite of there not being any evidence, was, quote, my inappropriate body language, raising my voice, and creating an intimidating environment for other members of the committee. These are charges I take very, very seriously, and let me respond to those. Yes, I am a large person. I've struggled with my body size my entire life, and I'm certainly mindful of how people who are larger can be perceived and discriminated against. I certainly never thought I'd see the day when my size would prohibit me from serving my hometown, and I absolutely didn't see the day when the city council would body shame me in front of the whole town. As far as raising my voice is concerned, I have documented hearing loss that has been diagnosed by my primary care physician. I actually have an appointment on Tuesday. I might be getting a hearing aid stemming from many years of playing music. According to the Americans with Disability Act, neither my body size nor the tone of my voice should prohibit me from being able to serve on a city committee. These statements are also in clear violation of the Code of Ethics of the Rules of City Council, Code 19. Compare this to when Councilor Riley shouted, "Shame on you, President Gomez," when a vote didn't go his way, or any of the countless times that all of you have raised your voices over the years when engaging in passionate issues. You owe me, after all this, you owe me 10 more seconds. Finally, I was in the Zoom meeting that night when these discussions about my alleged conduct were raised. Nobody called on me, no discussion was happened. Councilor Riley was simply to go ahead with this hearsay that could forever ruin my career. He doesn't even know, and also he doesn't even know the rules of the committee he chairs. The charter indicates 5 votes were needed that night, and he was only whipped together 4, and he is seeking a ruling from the city attorney, which is a really great usage of tax dollars, I believe. My questions are this. One,
So your 3 minutes is up, Eric.
Why did Councilor Riley go on a deeply personal vendetta against me? And why would anyone put their name forward for public service knowing that Councilors Riley and Smith and others might be working to ruin their reputation and to frankly ruin their lives? I think the two of you need to resign.
Okay, anybody else? And we'll try to stick to the 3-minute boundaries.
Mr. President, my name is Nathan Marquier, reside at 37 Holyoke Street. I'm looking at the agenda. I'm not sure if you're having a reorg meeting today. Maybe I missed it, but basically I'm here to say that I would really like to see a woman in leadership on the city council. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Public speak. Okay, anybody online? You could raise your virtual hand. It looks like Amy.
Yes, thank you, Council President and the City Councilor. I'm here to speak on behalf of Councilor Zaret and in opposition to the censure movement. There are serious concerns about why someone who's advocating for children under Massachusetts law, why someone who is being targeted for advocacy against anti-Semitism, while the board is not fulfilling, the school committee is not fulfilling its own anti-discriminatory obligations under its own policies and procedures. I find this problematic. This is unprecedented, and Councilor Zaret has done nothing but do his due diligence based on his obligation to advocate for the needs of all children. I thank you for your help and time.
Thank you. Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie, and I live in Precinct 1. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice, so if you can't hear me, please let me know.
We can hear you.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I just wanted to speak on behalf of Owen Zaret. I just came to knowledge of what was happening today, and I briefly read through all of the notes that were presented by the school committee, and I'm asking you to please not censor him. He is a voice for me and for many others, and if you censor him, you censor me. He cannot do his job and do his due diligence, as another member just spoke about in our community. It's really important that when there's a big issue like this, that there is a resolution to it and that there is complete transparency. And in reading the notes, there was not complete transparency. You know, we always ask the 5 whys to get to the root cause or to get to a plan to create a better place. We can't do that if you shut down people. You cannot turn off his voice. You cannot turn off my voice. That's what you're there for. And I have always appreciated all of his due diligence. He has always responded back with clear, concise answers when I have asked him of questions. So please consider not the censorship. Maybe we need to consider getting a mediator and sitting down with a group and really finding out what's happening. But to censor somebody is completely wrong. So I appreciate your time and thank you.
Okay, thank you. It looks like Lois Levin? Yep.
Hi. My name is Lois Levin. I live in Precinct 1, a longtime Easthampton resident at this point, and I also want to lend my support in favor of Owen Zarrett and against censure for him. Easthampton, in my experience, my kids actually went through Easthampton schools, but they've long since graduated. But I never really felt that Easthampton took the topic of anti-Semitism very seriously. So on a one-by-one basis, I had a good rapport with people in the school committee and in the schools when my kids were in the schools about redirecting some of the issues that my kids had and the things I saw. But it was all one by one, and it was never taken seriously. I've experienced anti-Semitic things at my home because of my kids. I can show you a few pictures, not now, but at some point. And Owen has been a sole voice that really understands what it's like when you're Jewish in this community. So I did not read all the information that came through. I just have not had the time to look through it. I feel for the school committee because I think they work very hard and I think they're trying to do the right thing. But looking at the issue of anti-Semitism and the grant with the small amount I read mentioned that there's other programs in the school that talk about diversity and ways to mitigate other issues between different groups in Easthampton. But anti-Semitism is very different than what I've seen come out of the schools through the other programs that they've done. And I've been following this for a long time. Just to restate, when my kids were in the schools, I was really on top of a lot of that stuff, and I have followed it ever since. Thank you.
Thank you. And it looks like we have Mike Offner.
Thank you to the City Council for having me. My name is Mike Offner. I'm a resident of Amherst, Massachusetts. I just wanted to say I was absolutely flabbergasted to read the school committee's letter because as someone trained in the law, I read that and thought, who in the world would draft and send this letter without having a lawyer review it? Because it was, I mean, it is one of the most legally foolish things I've ever seen in a lifetime of living in Massachusetts and following local politics in Massachusetts. To basically say, to ask the city council to censure a Jewish parent for speaking out about anti-Semitism, you would be in violation of the First Amendment, of the Equal Protection Clause, and of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which per Executive Order 13899 makes Jews explicitly a protected class, and Title VI is tied to federal funding. So in addition to the liability the town could face from a lawsuit, you also could be facing the loss of any and all future federal funding of any kind for the foreseeable future if you were to indulge in the school committee's blatantly and foolishly discriminatory ask. So for the sake of the city of Easthampton, I would strongly, strongly encourage you to decline to censure Mr. Zarrett and to drop the issue completely, because I cannot fathom how the school committee thought sending that letter was a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. And unfortunately, we're at our 6:15 wall for our public hearing. So what I would like to do is I would like to pause public speak time, do our public hearing, and then I'll reopen public speak time after the public hearing. And then anybody that would like to speak after will have an opportunity to do so. So I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any against or abstain? Public hearing's open, and it looks like Councilor Peak.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we have one item here. It's a interdepartmental transfer of $1,344 to cover an old bill from the Highway Department for a police detail. Is Mr. Nuttleman on the call?
Let's see.
Oh, he is.
Yep.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Greg.
Greg Nuttleman, Director of Public Works.
Go ahead. So there was a little technical glitch earlier and we weren't able to connect with Greg. So we moved this forward basically without a recommendation, just by, I mean, it's an old bill. It is what it is, but we just wanted to get a couple more details before.
Sure.
So Greg, if you could.
Sure. So what happened with this bill is at the time, Northern Tree was doing a bunch of work for Eversource in the city and also for us. And they had erroneously billed, some bills got sent to Eversource that should have been charged to the city. And by the time it was back to us and worked out, and I verified everything with Northern, the fiscal year had changed over, and we've just been working through the auditor's office to get this resolved.
Okay. Any questions from councilors? Any questions from the public, whether in person or online? Okay, seeing none.
All right, I'll make the following request in the form of a motion. Request is hereby made for approval of the following appropriation. Amount requested, $1,344 to be transferred from Highway Professional Services, $1,344 to be transferred to Highway Professional Services, $1,344. The amount requested will be used for the following purpose: prior year bill for police detail.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions or noes? Okay, seeing none, motion passes. Thank you, Councilor Peak. Looks like we have a utility pole location. Do you want to pass that back to Barbara? Councilor Zarrett.
Thank you. So we have a request to place a jointly owned stub pole on Everett Street. Essentially what this is there's a guy pole, a stub guy pole that's currently in that position. That's actually a tree that's been cut down numerous times. It's pretty rotted, and regardless, it's the best practice of the utility company to replace old pole guys like that with an actual pole. This is also in the location of the St. Bridget's Cemetery, and they were involved in the conversation as well in terms of guidance for that area. Tom Brown is here. He may want to speak on this topic, Mr. President.
Okay. Continue.
There were a few issues identified during the conversation, mostly that the existing pole was actually two separate poles, and that's not really relevant to the vote, but I just want to make it public record. Councilor Kwasinski aptly noted that, and the utility had been notified about it, and that is going to be addressed. Essentially, they have to finish removing utilities from one pole, then to just have one. But generally, there were no issues with this. Again, it's also a safety issue. It will replace this rotted tree, which will eventually be removed. And there were accommodations made to make sure that the new pole once voted on, will be coordinated with the cemetery, because I believe they want to put, I think, a fence there. But again, Mr. Brown can comment on that more. The committee voted 3-0 to recommend this to the full council with no modifications.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the council? Any questions or comments from the public? Okay. And I don't see any online. Okay, seeing none. Councilor Zaret.
Do you need to hear from Eversource, or are you satisfied?
I think we're probably fine, yeah.
Okay. All right, I hereby move to approve the petition filed by Verizon New England Incorporated and Star Electric Company, DBA Eversource Energy, to place one jointly owned stub pole number T.15/E.15S on the north side of Everett Street at a point approximately 18 feet easterly from the center line of Franklin Street. The new location will also be approximately 36 feet northerly from existing pole numbered T.151/2/E.15, and also that the petitioner has agreed to reserve space for one cross arm at a suitable point on each of said poles for the fire and police telephone signal wires belonging to the municipality and used by it exclusively for municipal purposes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any against or abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you, Councilor Zaret. We have a city ordinance amendment. Councilor Denham.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the ordinance committee met a number of times with the Council on Aging representative, Mr. Brown, to discuss changing the ordinance, Division 3 Council on Aging ordinance, to open up membership of this committee to include non-residents of the community who would, but who have some connection to the city. Either they have been a person working in the city, well, actually they have to be working in the city, but this stemmed from someone who had served and lived in the community for a number of years and then moved out of the city, but still had a fondness for Easthampton, but had to kind of obviously step off of this particular board. So we had a very good discussion in terms of the importance of being able to allow members of non-residents of Easthampton, but who do have an affinity and a connection, to be able to serve on the Council on Aging that could provide either some form of guidance to the city, but also individuals who spend a great deal of time in the community, who have an affinity for the community and want to be able to give back to this community because they are working here. So the committee, and I'll open it up to Mr. Brown in a second, but just to kind of cover this. So in section 2-51, section A, there is hereby established a Council on Aging board consisting of 9 persons appointed by the mayor from the residents of the city or persons working in the city. So that was an important piece that we wanted to add to that. Section B, the chairperson of the Council on Aging board shall be designated from time to time by the board, to provide that clarification. And then we added this important piece, D, that says 1/3 of board membership can be made up of non-Easthampton residents living in Western Massachusetts or the 4 counties of Western Massachusetts. So this was the piece, I think, that created a bit of a lengthy discussion because we wanted to make sure that residents of the city who were invested in the city and who were looking after the residents who are senior residents who access the Council on Aging, to make sure that in no way at any point are they outvoted, right? So the majority still would be maintained with the majority of Easthampton residents. And then in section 2-52, employees of the council, there was just some updated language. As you can see, we added with approval from the Human Resources Director. duty to carry out programs on the needs of older adults, et cetera. So you've all had the opportunity to kind of read those things, but this is what we came up with the help of the Council on Aging. Mr. Brown, I'm not sure, Mr. President, if you're open to allowing Mr. Brown to add anything that he would like to speak on in terms of kind of the necessity of this change.
I am open to that. Mr. Brown.
Hi, excuse me, Tom Brown, Vice Chair of the Council on Aging Board. Given 2 opportunities to speak, I won't give up. I'll come back for one of them at least. But I want to thank the Ordinance Subcommittee for reviewing this and taking it on. I think in the course of this action, we discovered that the residency requirement for the Council on Aging Board actually puts them, I believe, in the minority of other boards and committees in the city that do not have a residency requirement. And again, this was born out of a lifelong Easthampton resident who had been serving on the board for several years and happened to move to West Hampton. And through that process, we discovered this residency requirement, and he was required to get off the board. So that's why we're asking for this change. And I think some of the things that Councilor Denham mentioned actually put some safeguards in place. You must live or work in the city. So obviously there are folks, bank executives, for example, who might live elsewhere but work in the city, spend 40, 50, 60 hours a week in the city and are very in tune with what's going on. And then the other safeguard that was put in place, because I believe it was Councilor Smith raised the question, could you end up with an entire board that was non-residents? So the other safeguard that was put in place is that there could be no more than 1/3 of the board members that are not residents. So that means in our board of 9, the most we could have would be 3. It also gave us an opportunity to clean up some of the language. As Councilor Denham said, a lot of this was written in 1959. Most of you weren't born yet. Anyway, that's the basis for this whole request. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Councilor Denham, before we open it to questions?
No, I'm open for any questions that people might have.
Councilors, any questions or comments? Councilor Smith.
I would just like to add to that too. Another aspect of our conversation in ordinance around this was the possibility of having a new senior center eventually coming, and obviously a lot of people who work within the field of aging that might not be working currently in Easthampton might have a lot to offer. So we really did look at this from many different angles, and I really appreciated the amount of back work you did to prepare for the meeting. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any other councilors? Councilor Kwasinski.
It sounds like a lot of work has been done on this, and a lot of good work. I did have a question regarding, just for information purposes, maybe there's someone in the room who may have the answer to this, but senior centers, can folks from other communities visit our senior center, be part of our senior, come to the senior center? And maybe if you wouldn't mind asking Mr. Brown to answer that question, I'd be happy to hear that. I think it would lend credence to the fact that someone from outside the area who had a connection.
The quick answer is yes. If programs are being offered or trips are being offered, non-residents can sign up for those, but preference is given first to Easthampton residents. So if a bus trip was full, it would be full of Easthampton residents first, and then if there are openings, it would be open to non-residents.
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
That answers the question, yes.
Okay. Councilor Dunn.
Yeah, and one last point. I did reach out to the Massachusetts Council on Aging, just to additionally to find out, like, are there residence requirements for a Council on Aging? And she said no, but she did say, I would want to caution. I didn't at that point indicate that we would have a limit. She said there are a lot of individuals who are attempting to get on councils on aging in various communities so they can have various control over certain operations, et cetera. And so I think that this is really important that, in part, thanks to Councilor Smith, making sure that with this, we are opening up to people who care about Easthampton, but we are making sure that the majority of people making decisions about the Council on Aging are in fact residents, so.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Okay, any questions or comments from the public? And you can step to the podium. Okay, seeing none. Councilor Denham.
Yep, so I'd like to, in the form of a motion, accept the various amendments to Chapter 2, Division 3, the Council on Aging's, amend sections 2-51, established appointment of members, designation of chairperson, term of office, section 2-52, employees of council, section 2-53, duty to carry out programs on the needs of older adults, coordination with state council, as amended.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions or noes? Motion passes. And that also concludes our public hearing.
Close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any noes or abstention? Okay, public hearing is closed. I will reopen public speak. Just a reminder to address the council and to try to keep it to 3 minutes as close as possible. And name and address for the record. You know the drill.
Peg Coniff, Precinct 1. I'm not going to give you my address. I think we need to be clear in the room and on remotely that at least my perception of what the school committee is doing is not about the topic of anti-Semitism. What they are drawing attention to is the behavior of an elected official in corresponding with another group in the city. And I know this from personal knowledge. When I was on the council 2020 and 2021, I was the council president. And at any point, if I questioned or asked for clarification on something from Councilor Zaret, I would be demeaned, insulted, harassed, and bullied regularly. I have the receipts. And my mental health suffered during that time. And I looked to a lot of the people on this council who were on that council at that time who did nothing. And I've talked to you about it, and it infuriates me to this day that we talked about what can we do, and what I heard was he's a good guy. It'll be fine, he's a good guy. And I know that for a lot of people in this community, this whole process is very hard to believe why we're doing this to such a good guy. And I can tell you that maybe he's a good guy for a lot of you. He used to be my friend before this all started, so I totally understand where you're all coming from. But when he's not a good guy, he's a very bad guy. And I just want to applaud the school committee for the work that you've done and the integrity and the honesty and the courage that you've shown to bring this forward. This is not about anti-Semitism curricula. That is a red herring. I think what we need to understand is this is a disciplinary action. It's not going to stop him from doing council work. It's not censoring him. It is going in his record as behavior unbecoming of a city councilor. And I think it behooves all the city councilors here and any future city councilors to recognize that that kind of behavior will not be tolerated. And the only way we can show that is through this. This is the only thing our bylaws allow us to do, or he resigns. But this is disciplinary, and I think it is warranted. And I am here to tell you that I was not going to speak tonight because I figured, let the chips fall where they may. But I think there's a big misconception out here of what we're doing, and it's got to be corrected. And I stand before you as a person who was a victim, and I'm tired of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lindsay Rothschild, 73 Mount Tom Avenue. I wasn't planning to speak either. I'm frankly tired of it. I came last year. I warned about the same kind of behavior. Do women matter in this town? Do our voices matter? Because it doesn't feel like it does. Perhaps the guests are surprised by the school committee's action because they have not been involved in Easthampton civic life. So I want to provide some context. I've been subject to anti-Semitism. I've also been subject to the harassment and bullying by Owen Zarrett, and I've witnessed him doing it to other women on the council, other women in civic positions in this city. There's files here in the city hall. He tried to silence me. He contacted the FBI to silence me. He contacted the chief of police to silence Councilor Denham. This first discussion of censuring came up, as Councilor Conniff mentioned, in 2021. I was heartened because Councilor Derby and Councilor Peak said, yes, we know he's a problem. We're going to do something. But you know what? Now it turned out he's too good of a guy, and they weren't up to the leadership or the fortitude to stand up for women in this town. I was deeply disappointed by that. I trusted them. I trusted that they care about women's engagement in civic life, that they care about other people on the council and the victimizing that was happening. Dan Riss stood up and he was bullied and harassed off the council. They still remain silent. It's disappointing. I don't know what else to say. I've pretty much said everything I can. I agree, this is not about anti-Semitism. This is about his behavior towards the school committee. I used to be friends with Owen. In fact, Laura and I ran his first campaign from the school committee. I commend the school committee for saying no. That's female leadership saying no to the bullying. We're not taking it. And I also commend them on all the hard work they do for our kids in this city. And standing up to bullying is modeling what we need to do to our kids, for our children in this community, and I thank them.
I mean, I can't speak to, I'm only speaking about
Name and address, please.
Excuse me?
Name and address.
My name is Greg Schwartz. I'm at 18 Lady Slipper in Florence. You know, I'm here because of the censorship of Owen. As a Jewish person that lives in the Valley, I feel that this is, there's no other group. You know, there's just so much anti-Semitism going on around here nationally. And to think that if he's bringing up legitimate concerns about anti-Semitism in the area, and instead he's being told he's being censored for it, there's no other group where if somebody was African American or LGBT and they were complaining or bringing up a case of harassment or discrimination, and they'd be censured for it. So I'd like for everyone to reconsider that.
Neil Brick, 39 Ward Ave. I'm in here in support of Owen's efforts to stop anti-Semitism. I think it's important that we deal with that. I came here a month or two ago to seek a motion passed that I felt was basically, I felt it was anti-Semitic and it was attacking Israel, which really bothered me. And I think we have to be really careful about stopping anti-Semitism and you know, and so, I mean, I'm against bullying too. I don't know all the details, unfortunately. I've read as much as I can. But definitely we need to stop anti-Semitism and, you know, stop attacks on Jewish people. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, councilors. I'm Jeremiah McQuaid at 8 Jones Drive. Also wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I just feel like some things need to be said. I want to echo some of the comments from prior Councilor Pegg and Lindsay that this isn't about anti-Semitism. This is about a well-documented pattern of behavior. There is no surprise, or it's not a secret that there's a cultural problem on city council, that women don't feel safe, that people have left because of the culture. There have been news stories, multiple, and one name comes up, and it's Owen Zarrett. This is not about picking on him individually. This is about accountability. This is about using the tools that you guys have as a council to say this behavior is not okay, It's not stripping him of his counselorship. It's not stopping him from speaking in meetings. It's saying we stand with the women of the city. We stand with people who over years have faced this behavior and want to see it stop. Hopefully this will be a push to fix that behavior. And I hope it is. Thank you.
Good timing.
Hi, my name's Jean Francis, and I live at 15 Cottage Street. And I don't have anything prepared, but I would like to read, even though my eyesight is really bad, if you all would please bear with me. But first of all, I just want to second what everybody's saying. We need a woman on the council as president. So, Councilor Derby, I think it's time for you to move over. So you've been here for 20 years, that's long enough. So we need a woman, we need women to speak. I would like to read a letter from Carolyn Cushing, who could not be here tonight, because she's also our poet laureate, so she's doing something with the poet laureates. So I'm going to try and do this. I can sometimes easily read from my phone, so I'm going to try it. Okay, this is from Carolyn, who sent this letter to the city, all the city councilors except you, Owen. So I think all of you have read it. I wonder if I'm curious to know if you're blaming somebody else, Salem, for that, since you seem to blame other people. You're one of the blamers, I understand. But I do want to read this from Carolyn. Yesterday, news that the school committee, and thank you, school committee, is calling for Councilor Zarrett to be censored is upsetting but not surprising. As you know from this is Carolyn speaking, from my January 8th public speak posted below, she posted below in the email, I and my neighbors have been observing the toxic culture of the city council and the negative impact that your work for years, the negative impact, impact on your work for years. Every group that is dynamic, but when it reaches the point that those dynamics are in the media, I imagine that there must be a lot that has been happening behind the scenes that we don't hear about. And I think that Peg, the past President Conniff and past Councilor Lindsay Zarrett have spoken to that many times. So I don't know, anyway, so these are things behind the scene that it seems that the male councilors, Riley, Salem, and Tom, and JP, I don't know where you stand most of the time. So it seems like you all aren't listening to this. You're thinking, oh, he's a good old boy. Well, he's not. He's a bad old boy.
If you could finish your thought, that'd be
speaking
helpful.
to what? I can't remember who said that, but I second it.
That's 3 minutes.
Oh, my time's up?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, well, you've got my point. So I think, Salem, you need to move over and our new counselor person needs to move into your spot.
Hi, Nathan Markey, 37 Holyoke Street. I actually was not going to speak on this topic, so it's kind of in my head. I've always had a cordial relationship with Councilor Zarrett. It remains cordial to this day. I'm also the chair of the Easthampton Democratic Committee. I'm not coming here to speak as the chair of the Easthampton Democratic Committee, but we did have a meeting last night, and this topic took up quite a bit of the meeting. I'm not going to share details, but it was jarring. I don't think anti-Semitism is okay. I don't think misogyny is okay. I don't think racism is okay. I don't even think misandry is okay. I don't think any of it's okay. And bullying definitely isn't okay either. I want to reiterate my point earlier. I would like to see a woman in leadership in some capacity on the city council. I respect all of you tremendously. I know that you take a lot of heat And I also know that the school committee's been through a lot for the past couple of years, and I take a little bit of umbrage that they're being raked over the coals again. And that's probably my biggest issue with everything, because I don't have the personal experiences, but I trust people by their word. And thank you.
It looks like we have somebody online, Andrew Surlink. If you could unmute, you have 3 minutes. Just let us know your name and address.
Yes, good evening. My name is Andrew Sorolnik. I live on Massasoit Street in Northampton, and I'm here tonight to talk about the school committee's attempt to censor Counselor Zaret. First, I'm going to say that first, there are several speakers tonight who have tried to make this about Mr. Zaret's personal conduct, but that's not what is in the censure request. If you read it yourself, there's nothing in there about bullying or rudeness. The request targets only one thing, and that's Counselor Zaret's work on anti-Semitism in our schools. So let's look at what the committee's own request said that Councilman Zaret did. He went to official meetings with school staff. He emailed about anti-Semitism concerns. He suggested ways to improve the curriculum, and he asked questions through proper channels, and he met with principals when incidents happened. The committee has never tried to censure anyone else for advocacy, as far as I know. It has never said other information requests were improper. It has never complained when other parent counselors got involved. But now, when it is about anti-Semitism, suddenly these normal activities are worthy of censure. So this kind of selective treatment violates the City Council's ethics rules. The City Council's code explicitly bans religious discrimination. The school committee's own code of conduct requires putting children first. Instead of dealing with the real concerns about anti-Semitism affecting our kids, the school committee is attacking the person who raised the concerns. It's making up rules that don't exist, and is trying to silence legitimate advocacy about discrimination. As an Easthampton taxpayer myself, I'm concerned because this puts our city at serious legal risk under state and federal civil rights laws. I am worried about the liability I will face as a taxpayer to share in the legal consequences of the council's actions if it indeed censures Councilman Zaret. So here's what I'm asking the council to do. I'm asking you to reject this discriminatory request for censure. I'm asking you to consider censuring the school committee instead for discrimination. I'd like you to figure out why, I'm almost done, why anti-Semitism activism, advocacy triggers these extreme reactions, and to look into why the school committee isn't addressing discrimination effectively. The school committee has a duty to stand against discrimination, and it's time to hold the school committee accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so it doesn't look like we have anybody else. Oh, well, maybe we do. So, 3 minutes.
Hi, Jen Sandler at Williston Avenue. I also didn't intend to speak today. I'd urge you to actually read it because, the content of the school committee's letter is quite clear. There are many things that I could say. And I think that what I want to say that hasn't been said yet is that I don't actually think that Owen is acting out of ill will. I don't, and I don't think that in general bullying comes from ill will. I think it comes from trauma, and I think it comes from fear, and I think that those are real, and those are real experiences. But by his own admission, he met many times with the school committee, with members of the school administration to voice his concerns. He was heard, he expressed being heard, and then he lied about it. And he essentially slandered the school committee and the schools for not responding to his concerns. And they did respond to his concerns. And the fact that they didn't respond to them in exactly the way that he wanted to, you don't get that. You don't get that kind of power as a citizen, and trying to get that power to unilaterally determine the appropriate response is bullying. Especially when you lie about people who are doing their job and who have been under so much pressure and they've been doxxed, they've been attacked for doing like a really amazing job. They're under really difficult circumstances, and it's just really disappointing, honestly. I feel disappointed that this has been allowed to go on. I've been hearing about Owen bullying women on the council, women in power in this community for a long time. I have not experienced that myself, and because I haven't experienced it, doesn't mean that I don't believe that it happens. I've talked to a lot of people, and I listen to a lot of people, and I've listened to Owen, which is why I don't think that he's acting out of ill will. But that doesn't mean that it's not your responsibility as council members to stop it and to say, this is a boundary. This is an important boundary, and you have that power and you have that responsibility. So I urge you not to equivocate about it. It is not stopping him from speaking or removing any powers that he currently has. It's just putting a limitation on it to make sure that other people can do their job in good faith, which they have clearly done. It is so courageous of them to speak out about this, and I urge you to back them up. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you reset the timers?
Jonathan Schmidt, Precinct 3, I live at 442 East Street. As one of the other speakers said, I've also maintained a cordial relationship with Councilor Zarrett, and yet I find, having read through all of the documentation that was provided to you, that some of the behavior that is exhibited therein is jarring and appalling. I would like to stress that this is not a sudden item that is being brought forward to silence anybody in their pursuit of justice. This is something that has been documented as taking place over the course of a year. As I think about, what else I can contribute to this conversation, having served on the committee previously, having been a citizen who joined that body with grand ideas about what I thought the students should be learning to succeed as humans in the 21st century, I quickly learned that that was not the purview of that body. I see that some of the proper channels have been followed to, meet with various administrators to talk about, curriculum and additions that could be provided to support students' learning. But ultimately, it is the role of the school committee to create policies, in this case, that oversee the schools. And as is clear in the documentation that you've been provided, there are numerous policies related to the issues of harassment and bias. I joined the committee at a time when we were in dire straits in relation to how we were allowing discrimination to happen within the school district. And as a result, the district became leaders in the region in terms of bringing in experts and education to address these issues, to address bias in all of its forms, and I think to overlook those policies that are clear and in place and enforced would be a disservice to the school committee. And I'll just finish by saying I also applaud those who've come forward. It is not an easy thing to do, especially when there are so many people who would readily rally against you despite not having read all of the materials. And so I thank you for your time, for your consideration, and for taking this issue seriously.
Okay. Looks like we have another hand online. Julie.
So I didn't know if I could speak not about this issue here, but about bullying, just for a brief moment. Julie from Precinct 1. I can remember back in January of 2022, going at a council meeting, they spoke about a reappointment that they had did at a meeting in December 17th, 2021. For the city council, during that meeting, Owen Zaret had expressed his concerns about a reappointment to the Parks Commission due to an individual who was bullying him, said vile things against the EPD that were so derogatory, and every person at that council excused it. They said it was okay because it was free speech. That included Peg Coniff, that included Lindsay Rothschild. All of them said it was okay because it was free speech. So when we talk about bullying, it needs to be across the board. I don't think Owen Zaret was bullying when he was going with the school committee trying to get answers. That was being persistent. That was trying to get answers. So when they claim that they're being bullied, they were okay with it back then. Now they're not okay with it. They feel it's, they're being harmed. What about back then in December of 2021, when you guys all set that precedence by go ahead and allowing that person to be appointed to the Parks Commission? So you need to think back when you set that precedence. And I am not saying that Owen is bullying. I don't think he is. That is, what he's doing is not the definition of bullying. But what that other gentleman did, that Coniff approved of, and what Lindsay Rothschild approved of, that was bullying. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Looks like there's nobody online. I will close public speak time now. And we do not have any items for immediate attention, which brings us to communications from elected officials, boards, and commissions. And we do have a school committee request. And I would invite Laura Scott to the podium.
Good evening, City Council. I'm planning tonight to read into the public record one of several attachments that I sent to the full council, including to Councilor Zaret this past Sunday at 6:45 p.m. I just want to state for the public record and those who might be watching that email, there was text to the body of that email that is public record. There is a 4-page letter to the City Council requesting the censure of Councilor Zaret. There is also a communication timeline, an arrangement of a collection of our relevant policies in Easthampton Public Schools that deal with anti-bias, anti-discrimination, etc. We can certainly make that, we've made every effort to make that as widely available as possible. Anyone is free to reach out to any of us and we'd be happy to share that with you as well. Request by the Easthampton School Committee for the Easthampton City Council to censure Councilor at Large Owen Zaret. Easthampton City Council President Derby and Easthampton City Councilors Kwasinski, Jadzak, Peak, Smith, Denham, Riley, and Zaret. I'm writing to you as chair of the Easthampton School Committee with unanimous support and agreement of the committee. We submit to you the following information regarding the conduct of Councilor Zaret toward the school committee and members of the Easthampton Public Schools administrative staff, and we seek your support and cooperation in the dispensation of commensurate consequences. The events and circumstances outlined in this letter are troubling and unfortunate, and we are bound as an elected body in service of Easthampton Public Schools to the Code of Ethics developed by the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. We have a responsibility to the community, to the school administration, to our colleagues on the committee, and primarily to the children in our district. Therefore, we are compelled to address false statements about the district and conduct that negatively impacts the work of our administration and staff, our students' learning, and the morale and reputation of Easthampton Public Schools. We respectfully request that your body votes to censure Councilor Zaret for the conduct outlined herein. Beginning early in 2024, Councilor Zaret repeatedly requested an audience with our interim superintendent. While that is outside of the traditional purview of a city councilor and therefore not standard practice, Given that Counselor Zaret is a parent of a current Easthampton Public School student, a meeting was scheduled and took place on March 16th, 2024. In attendance were our interim superintendent, our curriculum and grants coordinator, myself, and Counselor Zaret. This was a lengthy and cordial meeting that, by Counselor Zaret's direction, focused mainly on the topic of anti-Semitism in our district. We empathized with his concerns and sought to reassure him by enumerating the broad and robust protocols and curricula that we employ to not only teach history and world cultures through a lens of compassion, justice, and critical thinking, but to also support our teachers and staff so they will be well equipped to instruct around bias and discrimination of all types, and particularly those that target vulnerable populations. The school committee and the district consider issues of discrimination and bias as a high priority, and as such, have an ongoing contract with the Collaborative for Educational Services to continually strengthen and expand our district offerings to educate students, staff, and our school community about anti-bias, anti-discrimination, hate speech, trauma-informed responses, social and emotional support, and restorative justice practices. Following that initial meeting, at Counselor Zaret's request, we agreed to schedule a second meeting that took place on April 2nd, 2024. I was not able to attend that meeting, but those in attendance, including Counselor Zaret, described to me that it was again a cordial discussion in the same vein as the first. In the months following the second meeting, the school committee and our interim superintendent received a multitude of emails from Counselor Zaret. These were centered around the theme of combating anti-Semitism in Easthampton Public Schools, including suggestions by Counselor Zaret to implement specific curricula in our schools and school-sponsored events featuring local faith leaders. The tone and content of the emails indicated that Counselor Zaret was not satisfied with the responses from the committee and the interim superintendent. It also became evident that Counselor Zaret was making a number of escalating complaints in multiple public forums about anti-Semitic incidents in Easthampton Public Schools, alleged inaction on the part of the school committee and administration to prevent and address such incidents, and that his efforts to communicate with the school committee and administration were ignored. These statements are not true, and we have outlined above how the committee and the administrative staff regularly communicated and met with Counselor Zaret. It was difficult to understand where the breakdown in mutual understanding occurred, and continuing communication with the counselor was increasingly challenging. At the start of the 2024-25 school year, 2 members of the school committee agreed to take the lead in communications with Counselor Zaret with the goal of determining what specific requests the counselor had, which of those requests we could agree to, and to offer explanation for any specific request that we could not grant. These efforts included continued regular communication with the counselor, multiple meetings that included school committee members, administrative staff, curriculum specialists, the district's equity steering committee, and the Collaborative for Educational Services. Despite these efforts, the pattern of communication from Counselor Zaret expressing frustration and dissatisfaction with the school committee and the school administration continued and unfortunately escalated to incidents of clearly unprofessional and unacceptable conduct on the part of the counselor. Following a meeting with a school committee member and curriculum specialists, Counselor Zaret attempted to schedule an unauthorized meeting with himself, the curriculum specialists, and an outside organization. He did so without prior notification to or approval from the committee or school administration. This inappropriate interference was discovered when various parties involved reached out to the interim superintendent to express their concerns and confusion. Shortly thereafter, there was an incident at one of our district schools that was identified and dealt with promptly in accordance with district and school policies. School administration notified the interim superintendent, the school committee chair, and school families that this incident had taken place and encouraged those who would like more specific information about the incident to schedule a meeting with the building administrators. Counselor Zaret immediately requested and was granted such a meeting with the building administrator and was told the specifics of the incident. Immediately following that meeting, Counselor Zaret texted a member of the school committee that the meeting had occurred. He then emailed the school committee and interim superintendent to request that they disclose to him the specifics of the incident at our district school, in violation of the process that had been clearly communicated to the school community. To be clear, at the time of Counselor Zaret's request, he was already aware of the specifics. When questioned by the school administrator that he had met with as to why Counselor Zaret had made such an odd request, he responded that he had not told the group about this meeting and further included the following via email. Quote, "As for my request to them with knowledge of the content, it is essentially a test of good faith behavior between municipal partners. As stated, your response was prompt, cordial, and collaborative, and you provided me more courtesy and professionalism than I have experienced from my municipal peers." As indicated, the paucity of response from the committee and superintendent overall has left me incredibly concerned as to expected transparency and collaboration between community partners. I am interested to see if my inquiry will garner any response at all, and whether they will share any information, especially given my preemption over a year with warnings about anti-Semitism. Whether I am a city councilor or parent or Jewish person, I set a certain bar of cooperation for municipal officials, and that starts with openness to dialogue and transparency. My colleagues on the school committee continue to refuse to offer that. Again, this is not a gotcha moment for them. It is a litmus test of trust, end quote. In further escalation, the next day, I, as school committee chair, received an email from a reporter with a local newspaper. That reporter stated that they had been contacted by Counselor Zaret, who raised concerns about rising incidents of anti-Semitism in our schools, the lack of administrative action in response, and accused the school committee and direct district administrators of ignoring his request for communication and transparency on this topic. In these statements to a school administrator and a local reporter, Counselor Zaret acted in ways that we clearly perceive as untruthful, manipulative, and counterproductive to honest and effective governance. Those two events on that day triggered the need for an urgent response on the part of myself and the full school committee. I notified the interim superintendent, the mayor, our school department attorney, and individual members of the school committee. I also contacted the local reporter and shared with them the sequence of events beginning early in 2024 and continuing to present day, just as I have for you in this communication. As a result of the history of our interactions with Counselor Zaret and these specific incidents in the first few weeks of January, it is the belief of the school committee that this urgent response is required under our responsibilities as elected members of the committee. We must correct the public record and make clear that this type of counterproductive and potentially harmful conduct is unacceptable and will not be tolerated. It has become clear to us that something further needs to be done to ensure that such conduct from a fellow public official would be met with commensurate consequences. I would like to clarify that neither myself nor any member of the school committee or district administration has or should seek to silence critics of our work, nor to obscure from public accounting the challenges that we face, nor our shortcomings in meeting those challenges. State law and our own district policies outline the processes by which we hear and resolve complaints, and with good reason. Adherence to clearly stated policies offers equity in treatment and facilitates work between district representatives and other stakeholders toward best possible outcomes, without fear or favor. There is a clear distinction to be drawn between criticism or policy debates moderated through the appropriate channels on the one hand, and the dissemination of false claims in the public sphere and interference in district operations on the other. We as a school committee are faced with a fellow elected official who chose the latter. The potential harms that these actions might have caused are serious and incredibly troubling to our committee. We are currently negotiating the terms of a contract with our new potential superintendent and are actively seeking a new director of business services. The committee is working diligently on the preparation for an appropriation request to help cure the budget shortfall for FY25 after a number of unanticipated and unpreventable costs that occurred mid-year. We have also begun the challenging work of drafting our FY26 budget request, which will require close collaboration between City Council, city and school officials, and the school committee. All of these critical matters could have been easily disrupted or derailed by false and damaging headlines in local media. Additionally, the larger school community would be faced with deciding what is true and what is not, and making decisions about the best interests of their school-age children, which could certainly impact enrollment and school choice ratios. I do not know if Counselor Zarrett considered these potential harms before acting, but he should have. The damage to our district's reputation, morale, and financial viability could have taken years to correct. I would be remiss not to state unequivocally the strength of our district's values and our shared commitment to combating bias, discrimination, and hatred through rigorous and thoughtful learning in an environment that is safe and supportive for all of our students and staff. This has been and continues to be a top priority for our committee. We take that responsibility very seriously. We welcome opportunities to engage in rigorous debate about the myriad challenges facing public education. But any assertion that our district or our committee obfuscates or ignores incidents of bias, discrimination, or hate speech against any member of our district is provably false and unproductive in improving the experience and outcomes of our school community. Our school committee is incredibly proud of our district, staff, students, and families. We treasure the value of public education and consider it our privilege to serve the city of Easthampton in furtherance of Easthampton Public Schools. We thank you for your time and extend this communication to you, the Easthampton City Council, to consider the appropriate response to this difficult matter. Do not hesitate to reach out to us with any further questions.
Thank you, Chair Scott.
Are my other members allowed an opportunity to share?
I would allow that.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you to our colleagues at City Council for allowing us the time on your agenda during a packed meeting. I'm going to try to keep this short, and I apologize for my voice. I'm getting over a cold. My name is Sam Hunter. I'm the chair of the Policy Subcommittee on the School Committee, and I use he, him pronouns. The first thing I would like to do tonight is to apologize. I would like to apologize to members of the council and members of the public who have approached me regarding Counselor Zarrett's behavior in the past, who I did not take as seriously as I should have. All of us who have been following city politics for the last 8 years have heard stories and seen behavior that is not defensible. Counselor Zarrett was a friend of mine who did not have a very good understanding of social cues. I was able to breeze through the long and occasionally personal and accusatory emails he would send without taking it personally. I imagined he was passionate and maybe not great at reading people. He has shown me kindness during my time on school committee, and I appreciate that. But I'm sorry that I participated so much in covering up the other side of Counselor Zarrett, despite having been warned many times by people with nothing to gain. He's a bit of an odd duck, I would say to people. You just kind of have to brush him off. What I didn't realize was how much time and energy he was sucking out of the limited resources in our district. The amount of meetings he has requested, back and forths he has required, and emails and texts that he sent to other members of the school committee and to the interim superintendent and other members of the administration is very alarming. Additionally, constant meetings with him around the topic of anti-Semitism have not gone anywhere. He will generally say that he finds each meeting productive, report that he is satisfied, and then within a few days, he expresses that he is upset with our response. And he will often begin writing long and accusatory emails to us again. In fact, today he was actually invited to a meeting with senior administrators and a representative from a community organization that we work with to discuss anti-Semitism. This was a meeting that he was invited to at the beginning of the month. He did not even respond to the meeting request until 2 hours before the meeting this afternoon.
Point of order, that's a false statement.
I'm putting that, Laura told me not to bring it up, but I think it's really important that people understand that he's lying.
That's not true.
Our roles on the school committee are complex and technical. We are tasked with supervising the superintendent, participating in and approving the budget, advocating to the city when more and different resources are needed, and setting district policy. When families reach out to me, I generally try to connect them both to district and community resources. And if those resources have been inadequate, the chair will generally determine if we need to involve the interim superintendent and how much. Additionally, families will often reach out with bigger picture issues and issues that may be addressed publicly. In the past few days, many community members have reached out to me endorsing the censure and expressing that they were so relieved that finally someone is doing something about this. I'm struck by one parent who shared with me that her son had an experience at school that was distressing. She wanted to process it with someone in the district who had not been involved in the original incident because she wasn't sure what to expect next or what resources she could ask for to address her child's needs. Counselor Zaret's advice to her was to speak at school committee and also at city council, but to wait 6 months until a new council was seated. She found that advice to be odd and could not imagine saying anything about her son publicly on camera like this. She said that the advice made her feel like he wasn't taking her concerns seriously and that he was just tying it into whatever he was doing on city council. She described to me that there was not a shred of urgency in his response, even though she was quite worried for the immediate needs of her child. She also wanted to assure me, and I asked her if I could share that story, she wanted to assure me that she did decide to talk to the principal. The principal was very helpful. Her son is doing great. The advice from the counselor to that family was not just wrong, it was potentially dangerous to the immediate mental health needs of that student and their family and to their privacy. Students and families are always entitled to privacy when dealing with sensitive matters. There's a chain of command that needs to be followed from individual staff who witness the concern up through building administrators. Families should never feel that they need to speak publicly about distressing experiences that their children have experienced in order for their concerns to be addressed. This is an example of the counselor having a poor understanding of his role within the community and with the school committee in the district, and with district policies and building procedures that have already been developed to preserve dignity, human rights, and privacy of all affected. Despite the many emails sent between Counselor Zaret and the school committee, there was never once an email describing the concerns of the constituent who had reached out to him for help. Part of the foundation of a socially just education is accountability and restorative justice. We talk in the abstract about restorative justice a lot in education, but we have concrete policies and procedures for what to expect at each level of the school district. We are asking tonight for the adults in the room to model for our students what restorative justice looks like. We are not asking the counselor to resign. We are not asking for him to be recalled. We are not asking him to stop speaking. We are only asking that the counselor use the resources, that the council use the resources that it already has to put a note in his file because of this particular instance in which he misrepresented himself to outside agencies, misrepresented our community, and lied to the press. This behavior is troubling. It has gone on for some time. It can stop today because we can stop enabling it. I know this is hard for Counselor Zaret to hear. I am urging him to use this as an opportunity to reflect on the choices that he has made in his life and things that he could do differently and what might be the best way for him to continue being the best possible version of himself in the future. I thank the council for your time. And again, I am deeply sorry to the community as a whole for the role that I have played in condoning this behavior. I am grateful for the opportunity for growth, and I'm sorry that so many have been hurt along the way.
Megan Harvey. I have a slightly different thing to say, and I'm going to be using I statements, but I am speaking for all of the members of our committee when I say this, that I stand firmly and unequivocally against all forms of hate and discrimination. I am deeply concerned about all incidences of hate and discrimination that happen in our schools, in our city, and beyond. I'm deeply concerned about the rise and acknowledge the rise in anti-Semitic incidences in our state and in our country, and I'm deeply concerned. And it is a top priority for our school committee and in our district. I have spent many hours working on this. I'm not satisfied with where things are. As my colleagues have said, we have contracted for years with the Collaborative for Educational Services, among others. This work is never done. We have not done a good enough job. There is no point where we say, we have solved this. I thank all who have reached out, who have advocated for continual improvement to our policies and our procedures. I have thanked Counselors Zaret many times, and I stand by that. Advocacy is incredibly important, and I appreciate it, and it gives the fuel that we need to the people who are doing this work on their various committees. I just want to, again, state that this is not about the content of this matter. This is about what happened in early January, and for us and for our committee doing something that we absolutely do not want to do. This was never, this is not something that would have organically come up from within our committee. However, we are compelled to correct falsehoods that we received from a member of the media, that were told to a member of the media that we received secondhand from that media. We are not dismissing or ignoring any incidences that are happening in our school, nor any parent or community member or counselor or anyone else who reaches out to us. We are not ignoring it. We are not downplaying it. I am taking it very seriously. I'm not done working with the groups I'm working with. This is not an end to any of that. Meetings are ongoing with the Equity Steering Committee, with the Collaborative for Educational Services, and with any community members and all community members and with local organizations. My work is not done. Our work is not done. I want to make that clear that this is not about not addressing this the content of this or anti-Semitism. And I'll just end by saying that none of this is what any of the members of our committee wanted. Our priority is the children in our district. That's it. We are doing what we believe to be right and best for the children of our district.
Last one. Thank you. Hi, I'm Linda Markey. I'm a member of the Easthampton School Committee, and I'm just here to say probably less eloquently than my fellow school committee members that I stand 100% behind, that I am here and I was elected to serve the students and this community in the capacity of education and public education. I do not take one single action that I do not believe is in the best interest of the children of this community. We have been given these children. They are all of our responsibility. I would not stand here today in full support of my other committee members without saying that this is an action that was extremely difficult to make because I have had a relationship with Counselor Zarrett that I have valued. It is also an easy decision to make when you realize that there are certain clear situations and boundaries that have been taken and that have been stepped over. This is not about anti-Semitism. This is not about anything about that. This is about standing up and saying falsehoods, and it's about trying to combat that. And it's about saying that we, as a community, need to work together to create an equitable environment for every child in our community. And I stand 100% along with the unanimous decision that was made by my school committee members.
I'll be really brief, just as a member of the school committee. My colleagues and I, we advocate for every student in our, Eric Guyette. We advocate for every student. We take every issue brought to our attention seriously, and we want to work with people. And I've had cordial discussions with Owen, and I would hope that we can continue to have discussions as all people wish to do. But I also know we brought up the topic of bullying, and I think the other topic that I even teach in my class is being a bystander. And when I listen to my colleagues, although I've not experienced it myself, I do believe that it's real, and I do believe that it needs to be addressed. So I support them 100% in that.
Thank you.
That's it.
Okay, thank
Do
you.
you need us for any questions or anything?
So as far as procedure goes, basically, as per our rules, a counselor can make a motion to move this to the Rules Government Relations Committee, where then the letter will be reviewed. Counselor Zarrett will have an opportunity to respond, and that's where the process will unfold. And I believe that we do have a counselor that is going to make that motion. So, yeah, you guys are all set. Counselor Kuzinski?
I move to move the letter from the school committee to the Rules and Government Relations Committee for further review.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any noes or abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, motion passes. And so we still are in our communications from elected boards and officials. Do we have any other counselors that would like to make an announcement or speak? Counselor Zaret.
Thank you. I just want to take this time to start by recognizing International Holocaust Awareness Day, which is coming up on January 27th. This day memorializes the liberation of the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp and remembers the murder of 11 million people, 6 million of whom were Jewish people, roughly 2/3 of Europe's Jewish population. The Holocaust is a data point on a long history, centuries going back, of anti-Semitism or hatred towards Jews. It is also part of a reflection towards today. Here and now, we are living in a time where anti-Semitic incidences have increased over 200% over the past year nationwide. This represents an ongoing steady climb over the past 5+ years. FBI statistics demonstrate that greater than half of all hate crimes are directed towards Jewish people and make up 2% of the population. A recent study demonstrated a worrisome rise in anti-Jewish sentiment across the globe at over 50%. In the Commonwealth, anti-Semitic incidences increased over 70% in the past year. This places us roughly at the top third in the country. My work as a city councilor is to reject hate of all kinds and work towards the safety of everyone in Easthampton. Inseparable from my identity is being very openly and proudly Jewish. This part of my identity provides me with very specific historic, learned, and lived knowledge about the contemporary manifestation of anti-Jewish hatred, as well as a broader understanding of that group's feelings, concerns, and experiences on the topic. And in this moment, I feel a very specific urgency on the issue. The national and state statistics include commensurate increases in anti-Semitism in our schools. I've sent a number of communications on the topic meant to underscore my sense of an extreme concern and urgency on this issue. I believe that we have shared concerns for our students in our community, myself and the school committee and the school administration. So today I'm offering an open invitation to collaborate. Can we pledge to focus now on anti-Semitism in our community and schools? Can we create an outline to work constructively towards a shared goal? Form a task force of city stakeholders, the mayor, myself, schools, parents, moving towards productive and compassionately towards a goal of educating and ensuring the safety of students, teachers, staff, and families. This is an exceptional time to unite as a city. Let's all band together now at this most urgent time for the Jewish people. My hope is that we can all do this and move so forward, biyachad, together on this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Zaret. Is there any other? Councilor Denham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say that I'm incredibly heartbroken for what I heard today. Because I do believe that there are Jewish people in this community, as there are other people of color, as there are women, as there are members of the LGBT+ community who hurt. I know that, I see that, I experience that. And at the same time, that doesn't excuse a person who's a part of those communities to abuse other people and to bully them. You can do both. And I'm incredibly sad about the experience of people, individuals on the school committee, the majority of whom are women. There are members of the LGBT+ community in that. And this is not a one-off situation. In April, Councilor Zaret sent an email to the police accusing me of being belligerent, of suggesting that I'm menacing, and insinuating that I might cause him personal harm because I asked him in an email where I documented his ongoing aggressive behavior to stop. For that, Counselor Zaret then proceeded to go to other counselors on this committee to undermine my relationships with them, which resulted in...
Point of privilege. Point of privilege. I disagree with the accusations. I believe that the counselor is engaging in personalities, and I think that if we want to mediate this conversation, I think there's better places to do it, but I feel that the statements are both speculative and rumor mongering and not maybe fully representative of the relationship.
Point taken. I would say, Counselor Denham, if you could continue with generalities.
That's fine.
Yep.
I think that there is ongoing behavior on this council by an individual that undermines the responsibilities that those counselors have with the community and undermines their ability to build relationships with members on this council and within the community. That is a fact. And for this council to be able to move forward, there needs to be a change in direction. However, I am tired of the expectation of cruel behavior having to be mediated. I did not run for city council so that I could pay attention to the emotional needs of other people on this council. I ran for this council and to represent members of this community so I could meet the needs of members of this community. That is why we are here. And the suggestion that we don't care about the needs of other people is just false. But we also don't have to be bullied constantly.
Point of privilege.
I'm done.
That concludes?
Mr. President, I believe that using terms such as bullying without accurate representation of what that means, I think those are very strong and again are making suggestions to the public that might be misleading.
Point taken. And I think that we will move on from elected officials' communications. And we do have correspondence, which is the 2025 city election calendar, and that is for information. We don't have any president or vice president communications. I do not believe the mayor is here. And so that brings us to committee reports. Finance, Councilor Peak.
Thank you, Mr. President. We met like an hour ago to talk about the old bill from the Highway Department that we discussed at public hearing. We're going to be meeting next week, but on account of some scheduling, it will not be at our normal time. It will be Thursday, January 30th at 5:30 p.m. In conference room 1, where we'll be discussing the new business on the agenda. Would you like me to move that new business?
Yes, please.
Okay, so let's see. So first of all, I would like to move the City Council FY26 budget to the Finance Committee. And to set a public hearing for that for our, oh, we don't need a public hearing for that. Well, then, to not set a public hearing.
So just to send it to committee?
Yes.
And we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion on sending the FY26 City Council budget to Finance? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions or noes? Motion passes.
Okay, and then I have two, an interdepartmental transfer and an appropriation. As a group, I'm going to make a motion. I'll make these requests on first reading as a motion and set a public hearing for our next meeting at 6:15 p.m. for those two items. Okay. So the first one, request is hereby made for the following appropriation. This is the interdepartmental transfer. Amount requested, $20,000 to be transferred from reserve fund, $20,000 to be transferred to salary, $20,000. The amount requested will be used for the following purpose: funding of the salary of the sustainability coordinator position at 34 hours per week for the remainder of fiscal year 2025. Second one. This is the supplemental appropriation from the CPA. Request is hereby made for the approval of the following appropriation. Amount requested, $100,000 to be appropriated from CPA fund undesignated fund balance, $100,000 to be appropriated to Tasty Top Affordable Housing, $100,000. The amount requested will be used for the following purpose: for the building of 36 affordable housing units in phase 1 of a 34-acre mixed-use development.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to move both of these and set the public hearing. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any noes or abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you, Councilor Peak. And let's move on to public safety. Councilor Zaret.
Thank you, Mr. President. We met recently. Let me just pull up the calendar here. We typically meet the second Tuesday of every month, so I believe that was the 14th. Yes, we met on January 14th at 6 p.m. We had a number of topics to discuss that I want to make sure I summarize appropriately for the public. The roadway, we did not have a quarterly review of public safety departments at that meeting. The roadway infrastructure and pedestrian safety items was mostly a report by residents living in the Loudonville area. This is a group of residents that had requested a meeting due to concern of both high speeds and a perceived number of accidents there, as well as other noted potential dangerous infrastructure there. There's no sidewalks, there's nowhere to cross. It's a two-way stop and there was recently particularly a bus accident there, which raised concerns for the safety of school students. Some of them came and spoke during public speak. Director Nuttleman from the DPW and Lieutenant Detective Alexander were both there. We reviewed the concerns. Two things came out of that discussion. One is that there's a potential for a grant program to install a permanent speed sign in that area. That's a grant that I believe opens up this summer, and so we're kind of on hold for that. But I think there was consensus among the two members there that we'd obviously be willing to lend support. Director Nuttleman discussed the complexities of that intersection, that being that there's been multiple studies and the grading of the intersection makes it very difficult, both in terms of sight lines, et cetera. That intersection was actually regraded a few years ago. A light would be very expensive. There is a potential for a four-way stop, and he says that they will consider studying that further. Other things like sidewalks, et cetera, are very difficult because of the elevation of the roadway there, as well as an existing floodplain. We also briefly discussed the Glendale Bridge down the road. That's a multi-million-dollar project, and that bridge needs to be replaced, but replacing that bridge also will facilitate potentially in some more safety in the area. We also had a discussion with a gentleman who is new to the area, Mr. Tom Drott. He brought up concerns generally about bike safety, but more specifically on East Street and Hendrick Street. Again, we reviewed that and discussed that and determined that at a future time, we would have to have a more discussion both with DPW in particular to those streets, but as well as potentially the planner in terms of complete street on those streets. We did not review the traffic and traffic rules. We did not review the language of traffic rules and order and did not discuss the pedestrian safety on West Street. The request to consider a citywide speed limit was essentially granted. There was some really good input from members of the public, basically explaining the significant decrease in fatalities when you decrease speeds to 25 miles per hour. Counselor Derby and I, who were in attendance, our exceptional clerk was not there, agreed to put that forward for a public hearing the second week in February. Basically, we just have to determine the language, the location of traffic rules and orders, and have to add a couple definitions. So I'm just still working on that, and we'll give that to the clerk. But we plan to hold a public meeting on that item at the second February meeting, February 19th. So at this point in time, I'd like to make a motion to add a public hearing for the request for a citywide speed limit of 25 miles per hour at 6:15 in these chambers on.
That's why I'm here tonight.
Well,
You said, last meeting, you said you were going to do it.
And that's for February 19th. That's a motion.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the council? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? Motion passes.
The proposal to reverse the traffic direction on Daly Field Road, we had agreed that there would be more of a public availability session in public safety before it actually gets to a public hearing. There were, I think, just a couple members of the public. We had Director Mason there and believe one of the parks commissioners. Commissioner Henninger was there. They both, again, spoke on the topic, answered questions. Again, there was consensus to move forward with this. It will add significant safety to the area by redirecting traffic from the direction of Hisgin down Daly Field to Lowndes Avenue. That also will allow them to move the toll booth or the ticket booth in and allow right turns only in and out of the park, so there will be no cross traffic. We did at the time also review a list of streets that should be notified, rightfully so, and I can make that available to the council, but there will be letters mailed or postcards mailed to a number of bordering streets to the park. Because of that and the need to prepare that, we recommended that public hearing be the first meeting in March, which is March 5th. And again, the committee voted 2-0 to recommend that to the full council. So at this time, I would like to make a motion to set a public hearing to change the direction on Daly Field Road for a public hearing at 6:15 in these chambers on March 5th.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? Motion passes.
And then really quickly, finally, this was mostly a housekeeping item to remove Brewster Ave for our one-way streets. As many people know, this was an exchange essentially of land with the city. The city essentially had no more use for this street, and we were able to obtain land near the current Mountain View School to make way for the now Rotary. I forget exactly when that took place, but that was a few years ago. But that was still on our list of one-way streets. And so that was a very obvious decision to make. And so I'd like to set a public hearing as well for that item to remove Brewster Ave from the list of one-way streets and to set a public hearing for that item at 6:15 in these chambers on March 5th.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? Motion passes.
That is all for our report. We will next meet on Tuesday, February 11th at 6 p.m. in Conference Room 1. The fire department is anticipated to be providing a quarterly report. And I'll update at the next meeting if there's other items of note, as I think we've gotten a lot off of our schedule. Thank you to the council's patience for somewhat of a lengthy report, but the work of public safety is never done. Thus concludes.
Thank you. Councilor Riley.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the appointment committee last met yesterday, January 21st. Normally we would meet on Mondays, but it was Martin Luther King Junior Day. We had before us 2 appointees. Normally, I go in great detail to talk about the appointees because I think it's important for the council to know who it is that we're appointing when they are people that are brand new. These folks are not brand new. They are very well versed with the city. So the first person that we had before us was Lori Reynolds to be appointed as the tax collector for the city of Easthampton with a term expiration date of December 31st, 2027. And then also David Gardner to be appointed as our building commissioner with a term expiration date of December 31st, 2027. So just to give you very brief background, Lori has worked in our own assessor's office in the past. She's also worked with DPW and has served under Carol Vito, who was our tax collector for, I think she said it was probably 5 or 6 years. Carol Vito also recommended that Lori be appointed to fill her seat. You know, there really isn't much to say. I mean, the office needs to run as it needs to run, and Lori has been doing the job of the tax collector since Carol Vito's retirement, so she's already doing the work. You know, the other thing that I just want to put out there is that she's also a certified municipal collector, so she has certifications as well. And then in respect to Mr. Gardner, so he has been serving as the interim building commissioner since November 4th. I don't know if all of you remember, back when we were having conversations about the vacant storefront ordinance, there were questions about how many properties, you know, we had in the backlog that had not been inspected and received all the permits and licensing that were required. This has been an issue in the city for quite a while. And just to confirm that since November 4th, Mr. Gardner has become up to date on all of the periodic inspections that happen every 5 years. All of the certificates have been sent out. And then also the churches have all been inspected, so those are all set. And then for this 5-year iteration, there are 30 apartment buildings that are set to be inspected. The fees have already been paid. They're in the system. He's doing the work. He's caught everything up. He's doing a fantastic job. So I'm happy to answer any questions that either of you might have about these two. I think that their work speaks for itself. And the last piece that I'll say is that the HR department has already conducted the official hiring process. So in terms of like, are they qualified? Do they have, you know, the credentials? Everything's checked out and it's good to go.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilor Kwasinski.
I have just a statement, if I may.
Please.
I am thrilled to have competent people step up to the roles, folks who have been vetted through the system, they're known to Easthampton. I'm grateful, so thank you, and thank you for your work on the appointments committee.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, all right, so then in the form of a motion, I would like to officially appoint Lori Reynolds to be our tax collector and David Gardner to be our building commissioner, both with term expiration dates of December 31st, 2027.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any noes or abstentions? Motion passes.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. So next, I have a matter of correcting the record. I'm going to give a little bit of details here just so that way everybody is operating from the same set of facts. So at our city council meeting that occurred on December 18th, 2024, the city council voted 4-2 to remove Eric Poulin from the Parks and Rec Commission with 3 abstentions. During the vote, then Council President Gomez notified Councilor Peak that it didn't matter how he voted on the measure because the vote had already failed, which Councilor Peak then abstained. Former Council President Gomez then notified the public and the full council that the vote to reappoint had failed and that the council clerk would record it as such. Upon further review of the home charter, the city has determined that the vote was announced and recorded incorrectly. There is no grand conspiracy here. It was a clerical oversight that, except for Councilor Jadzik, who is not a councilor, we all share blame for not catching it. But tonight, I want to make everything right. So as for what you've heard tonight, I gave my word to people who filed complaints with respect to their anonymity. I'm a man of my word, and in a long career of working in the anti-violence movement where anonymity is paramount, I chose to accept that anonymity. When I had requested information from the city clerk's office about whether Mr. Poulin had previously violated open meeting laws, it was not to fish for a narrative to build a case against him. On the contrary, I was doing my due diligence to ensure what the facts actually were. This is a part of the job of the chair of appointments, is to investigate claims when they come up. I did not find that he violated open meeting laws, which is why I never brought it up in our committee report. I stand by protecting the anonymity of the people who I spoke to. If those people would like to eventually come forward and talk about their experiences with Mr. Poulin, they're welcome to do that. I'm also fine with people thinking what they want about my conduct in order to protect that anonymity. Those who work with me know how steadfast my morals and ethics are. And to that end, the personal attacks, they don't hurt me. In fact, this is part of the job of being a local government official, is to weather the criticisms that we receive, whether they are deserved or not. And while I did not make the error on the 18th, I also did not catch it either. So I accept blame for my oversight, and I'm happy to accept blame on behalf of the rest of the city council. Misinterpretation of statutes, laws, and charters is common in government. The true sign of good governance is to correct misinterpretations once they occur, and that's what I'm going to do right now. So for the matter of correcting the record, I will read the following language from Section 2-10 Council Review of Certain Appointments. Appointments made by the mayor shall become effective on the 45th day following the date on which notice of the proposed appointment was first received by the city council at a regularly scheduled meeting of the council, unless the city council shall, within that 45-day period, vote to reject such appointment, or unless the city council sooner votes to affirm the appointment. For the appointment of a department head appointed by the mayor, the city council shall act upon the appointment at the next regularly scheduled meeting following the meeting at which the appointment was first received by the full council, or that the appointment shall become effective. Here's the key piece here. Rejection by the city council of a department head shall require a 2/3 vote of the full council, except that an appointment to a multiple member body may be rejected by a majority vote of the full council. As I said in the previous meeting, the Parks and Rec Commission is classified as a multi-member body. So the key phrase in the language here is by a majority of the full council. While the council ruled in favor of removal, the full council means 9 people, where a majority means 5 people. Therefore, the vote to appoint was affirmed despite the president announcing that it had failed and the vote being recorded as such. This is an instance where a single word in an entire section of the charter determined the outcome of the vote. Mistakes happen, and I would please ask that the record reflect this going forward. I have no other business for the committee report, so I would just say that the committee meeting, the appointment committee will next meet on February 3rd at 6 p.m. in conference room 2, which is right here behind City Council chambers, and thus concludes.
It looks like we have 4 mayoral appointments, and those are going to be expiring on 3/9, so.
Yes.
And that, I believe.
So that there are 2 that were currently on the agenda that we did not review.
Okay.
So then there will be 2 more folks that will be added tonight for new business, so we'll have 4 appointees at the next meeting.
I just want to make sure that we have, all right, so we have time because the next meeting's the 5th, so.
Yes,
Yep.
yeah, it's February 3rd.
And you know what, just, would you mind moving those 2 appointments to the committee?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So I make a motion to remove the 2 mayoral appointments and new business to the appointment committee.
Second.
Yep, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? Okay.
I have a question, though, for clarification, not related to this vote. I just wanted to...
So the motion passes. Question, Councilor Zerritt?
Yes, Councilor Riley. So, thank you for the very in-depth explanation of that prior vote, but can you explain what the ultimate outcome is?
So
does it stand or?
Yes, so basically, so what happened, so the total vote was 4 to remove, 2 to keep, and 3 abstentions. And the motion that was before the council was to reappoint.
Okay.
It was recorded and announced by Council President Gomez in error. The assumption here was that we were going off of the majority vote, which is, we typically do that in instances where we vote on agenda items, that the higher number vote is the one that matters. There are always the exceptions, right? Sometimes it's 2/3 majority, sometimes it's a simple majority of the folks who are voting, and other times it is the full council. So as the language reads, to appoint Mr. Poulin to the Parks, reappoint Mr. Poulin to the Parks and Rec Commission would require 5 votes. To remove him would also require 5 votes. We did not have 5 votes to remove, therefore the motion stands. So he is reappointed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Councilor Peak.
Since I came up in this, I just want to say, as a bit of just accountability here, I absolutely knew that that was how the rules worked. And because Councilor Gomez, as a city council president, worked essentially full-time at that job, and as I did not, I knew that that was wrong, and I thought about saying that it was wrong, and then I deferred to a person who generally was right when we were in conflict with each other, because it just was more deeply involved in these things. And so I, even in that moment, went, wait, 1 second, and then I didn't say anything, and I should have. And so that was a rookie move on my part, and I am sorry. And I'm going to try not do that again. Next time that something seems wrong, I'm going to say something about it, even if I think that the other person is probably smarter than me. So there's that.
Fair enough. And that concludes Councilor Riley, correct?
I think so. I see there are other councilors that have their hands up.
Okay.
I'll defer to you, Council President.
Since we're in committee reports, let's keep it brief if we can, please. Councilor Krasinski and then Councilor Smith, did you have your hand up too?
Is there any further action required by this council in this matter, and how does it get affected, the result?
No, so I'll just say quickly, there was a question on whether, if Mr. Poulin had been removed from the committee by the mayor, then there would have been a question on whether or not the sunset period needs to occur for him to be reappointed, right? That is true, that if somebody is removed, I think 6 months before they can be, reconsidered. Right. That had not occurred. So there isn't anything else that we need to do at this point, other than to correct the record.
Okay.
Thank you for the explanation.
Councilor Smith.
I'd also like to make a point for clarification. It's my understanding since that meeting that since the information was not given a name, I made an error in supporting it because that broke open meeting law. And I just want to take full accountability for that. I agree with Eric Poulin, who came up to say that was not right, because it wasn't. I didn't know it at the time, and I would have corrected the action, except it turned out to be a moot point because he was reappointed. But I do understand the concerns. I understand where I made a misstep, and I just am aware of that, and I apologize for the misstep. And, I learned from it, and now we know.
Thank you, Counselor Smith.
all.
Is there any other? All right, so we're going to move on from appointments.
Yes, thus concludes.
Thank you, Counselor Riley. Thank you, Counselor Smith. To ordinance, Counselor Denham.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we haven't met since our last meeting. We are meeting tomorrow at 5:30 in Conference Room 1 to address all the items on the agenda. Specifically, we'll be discussing the shrubbery ordinance and the residency requirement, and we will have a new item. I just want to make clear that the review of the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnerships zoning ordinance recommendations, we are waiting for them to let us know who's going to be serving in a work group with the committee so that we can kind of move through that. So they are also meeting tomorrow at 6. And so at that point, we will be able to have an idea of who's going to be on that work group and who's going to be available to work with the committee. So we will be moving forward with that once we have those names. And there's nothing that needs to be...
Looks like Ordinance Review Committee's final report.
Ordinance Review... Yep, so we actually received a couple of new items from the city clerk. So that is clearly on the agenda. And I will be providing that information to the members of the committee, and we will not take that up tomorrow, but we will be looking at it at a future date.
And I think it needs an extension because our next meeting is the 5th, I believe.
Yes.
Yep, so that expires on the 4th.
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry.
March.
March. That's
I think I'm good.
No, I think you are good.
I don't think I
Sorry
missed
about that.
February.
I was looking at the sewage and fertilizer. That's why, and I just got it backwards. So I'm sorry
I
about
was like
that.
12-4, I don't do it.
No, I think we're good.
And then do you want me to move the...
Can you please?
Yeah, so I, in the form of a motion, want to move the request for the ordinance committee to review, update list of special municipal employees to the ordinance committee.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any noes or abstentions? Motion passes.
And that's everything that our committee has to offer council this evening.
Thank you, Councilor Denham. Property, Councilor Zaret.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have the utility pole location and public hearing. The ordinance request regarding flags on public property. I think, as everyone knows, that's an item of significant interest to many people in the city for a variety of reasons. And because of that, I'm still doing some background research on this because it's more complicated than what was entailed in the recent SJC ruling regarding flags. So I'm trying to gather some background information. I do respect, though, the public's interest in this. And so what I'm planning on doing at least is to have a meeting on this topic at this point, probably in February, just to gather some public input and allow the public to participate. We're going to probably need this room, I would anticipate, if you agree.
I do agree.
So I need to just look at the calendar, and certainly if there's counselors here, obviously A, on the committee, but also B, who can think that there might be a night that might be better based on our overall municipal calendar and or desire to attend as members of the public, please let me know, but I have to look that over. So I just wanted to update people on that, and that concludes.
Thank you. Rules and Government Relations, Councilor Krasinski.
Thank you. We will be meeting the Rules and Government Relations Committee on Wednesday next week at 6:15 p.m. to discuss two items that are on our current agenda. The request from Councilor Denham to review the rules of the council meetings. I do hope our city clerk is available that day. We'll check with her. It would be helpful. She had significant input into the process. and also the Home Rule Charter Amendment that was regarding the mayor's compensation. We will review that matter also at that time.
Okay.
This concludes.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Kwasinski. We don't have any old business or pending. I believe all the new business was moved to committee, which leaves the final item, which is the election of a city council vice president. And as everybody knows, our rules are clear as if there's more than 2 candidates that we would do ranked choice voting. And I think this was a good exercise for us because we had 3 candidates and Barbara was practicing doing ranked choice voting, so she's an expert now. Since that time, 2 of the people have withdrawn their interest in being vice president, which I believe just leaves 1, Councilor Kwasinski. And so at this time, I would just need a nomination for Councilor Zaret.
I move to nominate Councilor Kwasinski for the role of Vice President of the Council.
Okay, we need a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second now. Barbara, forgive my being naive here. Should I ask for anybody else?
Any further nominations?
Are there any further nominations? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
We have sorry.
Sorry.
We did not ask if there was discussion.
My bad. Any further discussion? Yes.
I just want to show my support for Councilor Kwasinski. I think that you'll do an exceptional job in this role. I think one of the things that I've learned from Chair Rist and from you is that you care very deeply about this council. You've been very dedicated to this council. I think that you have a lot of integrity, and I think that you try to do right by the community and by members of this council. Additionally, I want to acknowledge that I think that the last couple of years have been personally challenging to you, and through that, you have continued to show that dedication, and I think that your family and your daughters would be very proud of you today.
Thank you, Councilor Denham, and I do want to apologize for moving too quickly. I take full responsibility for that. And is there any further discussion? I'll just say that I've served with Councilor Kwasinski for 20 years, and I think I look forward to the opportunity to have someone that is wise and is dedicated to the city of Easthampton, and I appreciate you putting your name forward. So, Councilor Zaret.
Yeah, I think that, so Councilor Kwasinski and I have, I believe, we've served on the property committee every term. Is that correct?
I believe so.
And he's been gracious enough to alternate the chair with me, which is very kind. Yeah, same. I think that something I had mentioned in terms of my interest was kind of this role of parliamentarian, and I think that that's something Councilor Kwasinski certainly offers as well. There's kind of a stately way that he carries himself that I always admire. He seems to kind of find the middle road in things, but a way to unite people when he's talking, and is always very thoughtful when he does. And I think that's certainly something that is needed in leadership. And we've agreed on things and we've disagreed on things, and it's all been good. So I'm glad that you're in this role, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Okay, Councilor Smith.
I would also like to really vocalize my support for Councilor Kwasinski. I have worked with you for every session that I have been in as a city councilor. Not every session, but every term as a city councilor. I've always found you to be knowledgeable of the city charter, open to having discussions if I don't understand anything, and willing to have debates about issues that you either disagree with or don't understand. And I really think you're going to do a great job in this position, and I'm grateful that you're here. And it also made it easier for me to say, this is not the right time for this, but I very much trust Counselor Krasinski in that role.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you, Councilor Krasinski. And I would just say, there was a slight oversight on the agenda, so we didn't put the election for the president, which I would like to, it's important that we codify that as well. So I think we'll just do that at the next meeting. And as the charter states, or I believe the rules, maybe charter or the rules, states that we have to have a vice president within 2 meetings. The president position is not as clear. It's, so if we do it at the next meeting, it's no big deal. And I'm not quite ready to move over yet, but I don't know who else really would want to do this job because it's not easy. So I appreciate everybody for this long meeting tonight. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn since we completed all of our business. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. No noes or abstentions? Thank you. And that concludes.
Brad, maybe I'll see you.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh, man.